And that was Lisa, a guide dogs volunteer who has spent the past year training Archie. And he is now off to a new home where he'll be able to assist a visually impaired person like our reporter, Sean Dilley. And that is it from us for now. Thank you for your company over these last hour. See you again soon. For now, though, from all of us on the team, bye-bye.
You're live with Lucy Hockings on BBC World News. Russian lawmakers turn on their own military commanders. It comes after a Ukrainian attack on a makeshift Russian military base kills many soldiers on New Year's Day. Paying their last respects to Pele, thousands of people are filing past the coffin of the Brazilian footballing legend. He is lying in state at the Santos football stadium. Controversy in Israel. The new far-right national security minister visits Jerusalem's most bitterly contested holy site. 4 people die in a helicopter crash on Australia's Gold Coast. Officials say the collision could have been even worse. In the next half hour, we'll be live in Kyiv and Hong Kong and hear from our correspondents in Jerusalem and in Santos, Brazil. Let's start in Ukraine, where Kyiv has confirmed it carried out a strike in the occupied region of Donetsk, which it earlier claimed killed 400 Russian troops. Now, Russian officials are contesting this figure. They say only 63 of its soldiers were killed, but neither claim has been verified. Access to the site is severely restricted. We know, though, the attack happened in the early hours of New Year's Day, and it hit a building in the city of Makivka, where Russian forces were stationed. These are the pictures that we have from the scene. But with the very latest for us from Kyiv, here's our correspondent, Hugo Pachega. You're live with Lucy Hockings. Still to come, a warning from President Zelensky that Russian drone attacks are designed to demoralize his nation. We'll hear what effect they are having on day-to-day life. And we'll take you live to Hong Kong as the Chinese authorities hit back at the world's reaction to a big surge in COVID cases. You're live with Lucy Hockings. China has denounced the decision to impose restrictions on Chinese travellers because of the rise in COVID infections and warned it might take reciprocal action. International health officials have criticised Beijing for failing to release data on the spread of the virus and possible new variants. The US and about a dozen other countries will require those arriving from China to produce negative test certificates. Many Chinese have been rushing to book their first overseas trips in years after Beijing lifted its own travel restrictions. The Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning says the requirements on travellers are unreasonable. Yeah, Ben, thank you very much for joining us and giving a sense of how daily life is for you there. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have some pictures actually that have just come into us that show the aftermath of what we were talking about earlier, the shelling in Makivka in Russian-controlled Ukraine. What we are hearing from Moscow is that 63 servicemen were killed in the strike, but as Francis Starr was telling us, some Russian military bloggers are saying that number is much, much higher and have been incredibly critical of the military commanders. Russian politicians saying that they should be held to account for the deaths of dozens of soldiers in a Ukrainian rocket strike. Also to show you the live pictures we have coming into us at the moment from Santos, where people continue to file past the coffin of Pele. Thousands of mourners queuing through the night to pay their respects. We will see a funeral there later today. Good to have you with us here on BBC World News. Live with Lucy Hockings on BBC World News. Brazil bids farewell to a footballing legend. Thousands of people are still filing past Pele's coffin as he lies in state at the Santos football stadium. There'll be a procession through the city in around an hour from now. Russian lawmakers turn on their own military commanders after an attack on a makeshift military base kills many soldiers on New Year's Day. Controversy in Israel. The new far-right national security minister visits Jerusalem's most bitterly contested holy site. And American football star Damar Hamlin is in a critical condition after suffering a cardiac arrest during a primetime NFL game. In the programme, we'll be live in Santos in Brazil, in Washington and New York, and we'll hear from our correspondents in Jerusalem and the Gold Coast. The public wake for the Brazilian footballing legend Pele will end soon, and that brings to the close the last opportunity for many of his adoring fans to say goodbye. Pele has been lying in state in the Santos Stadium, the home ground of his former club, and it's been the scene that we've seen just like this for about 23 hours now. Tens of thousands of Brazilians lining up to file past the open casket, many of them queued throughout the night as well. We saw people falling to their knees and crying. We saw people applauding the moment they walked by. And we've seen some high-profile people attending too. Amongst the mourners, FIFA President Gianni Infantino. We are also expecting to see Lula, Brazil's president, sometime soon, in the next few minutes, in fact. But let's show you the scene at the stadium right now. Pele's body is still in the middle of the pitch at Santos FC, and when the public wake ends, and we think that will happen in about an hour from now, the coffin will be taken through the streets ahead of a private family burial. So let's take you live to Santos in the state of Sao Paulo. We can join João Pele from BBC Brazil, who is there. João, good to see you. It is just extraordinary when we see the pictures, the helicopter shots of all the people queuing, waiting to file past. Give us a sense of how it's been there. You're live with Lucy Hockings. Still to come. There's outrage in the Arab world after Israel's new far-right security minister visits the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem. And we'll bring you the latest from Australia's Gold Coast, where investigators are still trying to work out what caused a deadly mid-air collision between two helicopters. You're live with Lucy Hockings. We're going to take you now live back to Santos in the state of Sao Paulo, because we are watching many thousands of mourners file past the coffin of Pele. And the back of the head there that you can see there is Brazil's new president, Luis Inácio Lula da Silva. The government declaring 3 days of national mourning after the death of Pele. And we had been expecting Lula to travel to Santos to pay his respects. He is there now, and João Pele from BBC Brazil is watching events there. João, you were telling me a short time ago that you saw the helicopters circling. Obviously, Lula has now arrived. How long was he planning to stay for? Do we know? Let's take you back to Santos. We can still see Brazil's new president, Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, who has joined mourners paying their respects to Pele at the Santos Stadium. There's a small crowd there just gathered around the footballer's casket. Coming up, we'll be back in Santos, but also we'll be bringing you parts of an interview that I did with Pele back in 2015. You're live with Lucy Hockings on BBC World News. Brazil bids farewell to a footballing legend. This is the scene live at the football stadium in Santos, where Pele spent much of his sporting career. President Lula da Silva is still there. He has joined crowds of Brazilians who have been paying their respects ahead of his funeral. Russian lawmakers turn on their own military commanders after an attack on a makeshift military base kills many soldiers on New Year's Day. Hours before the new US Congress convenes in Washington, can Republican Kevin McCarthy secure enough votes to become the next Speaker of the House? And Beijing threatens to respond in kind after several countries introduce restrictions for Chinese travellers because of the rise in COVID infections. In the next half hour, we'll take you live to Brazil, to Santos, and be in Washington, D.C. as well. around half an hour, the coffin of the Brazilian football legend Pele will be taken through the streets of Santos in a final public procession ahead of a private burial. The new Brazilian president, Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, a short time ago arrived at the stadium, and he is still there because the icon has been lying in state. And thousands more made the same journey over the last 24 hours to pay their respects. So Lula's been there about half an hour, and we can just see him, we think, slowly making his way out now. But many, many thousands of people have travelled to Santos to pay their respects, and we can take you there and join João Filete from BBC Brazil, who is watching proceedings. So we think Lula was there perhaps for the last half an hour or so. João, what's happening at the moment? Deeply shocking. Khosrow Kabasi-Esfahani, thank you very much for joining us. Let's take you live to the Vatican, because at least 65,000 people, we understand, have filed past the body of the Pope Emeritus, Benedict XVI, on the first day of his lying in state at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. We've seen a couple of days now of lines of people waiting around St. Peter's Square to view the late retired pontiff's body. Benedict XVI died on Saturday at the age of 95, and we know he will be buried in the papal tombs under the basilica on Thursday. Pope Francis will preside over the funeral. It's the first time a pope will be buried by his successor. The Vatican has said Benedict's funeral will be solemn but simple. These are live pictures from the Vatican, where you can still see thousands of people queuing there outside. Do stay with us here on BBC World News, still to come. The future of thousands of Thai elephants hangs in the balance as the world turns away from performing animals. You're live with Lucy Hockings. Let's take you to Thailand, which has been one of the countries that was hardest hit by the impact of COVID on its tourist industry. Its large population of captive elephants has also been affected because elephants have been used to entertain tourists for decades. The shutdown left their owners struggling to feed them. Many visitors now view using elephants for entertainment as unethical, and that's forced the industry to reevaluate how the animals can be supported in the future. Jonathan Head reports. I am often asked by people who is the most famous person you've interviewed, and I have to say it is still the legendary Pele. He was charismatic, he was warm, he was utterly, utterly lovely, I have to say, completely charming. It was back in 2015 when I was lucky enough to interview him. It remains a complete privilege and an honour that I was able to do so. It was ahead of the opening of an exhibition of art to celebrate his sporting and humanitarian achievements, and we wanted to bring you just a little bit of a clip from that interview in 2015. Can I start by asking you what it's like, you're 75, to have this incredible art all been inspired by you in your life?
This is an honor to me, but at the same time is a big responsibility, because this is some project for the new generation. And then I thanks God for that.
Do you have a favourite work of art?
I mean, like the bicycle kick. I feel uncomfortable to say no. I like better the bicycle kick, but I think this is my favorite.
Does it make you remember that moment?
Yes, it was not only this moment, but the action, because it's very difficult. You see, picture with the head, with the kick. You have a lot of players who do.
What do you remember, Pele, about meeting Andy Warhol?
After the game, we went to the club. He came to me and said, listen, Andy Warhol, the guy, I want to talk with you. I thought he was a soccer player. Soccer player.
We asked people all over the world to send us some questions to ask you. And the first one I got that I liked was Diego from Chile. Wanted to know what your best achievement was in your life.
I think the message, the experience who I had, and the message to give to the new generation through the football, through the sport, I think this is the most important achievement.
You've inspired many people. Who inspires you?
My father. My father was one a good soccer player, you know. Then he used to tell me, listen, God gave it to you the breast to play football. This is, you don't do anything. God gave it to you. But to be a good player, to be a good man, you must be prepared, you must respect people, you must stand. Then you're going to succeed. Then my father was my inspiration.
He was so utterly lovely. What a privilege to interview Pele. That was back in 2015. See you tomorrow. Bye.